Lisa, to you, what is a non-traditional F1 student visa applicant?
Well, I think the most common non-traditional F1 student applicant is the older applicant. Maybe they've already had an undergraduate degree and they're looking to pursue a master's degree or a PhD, but perhaps there's been a gap between the undergrad work that they've done and the degree that they're pursuing now. Maybe they don't have a degree and they're pursuing it later in life. That can happen as well. So I think that's the most common non-traditional student we see. Somebody who is pursuing a degree later in life, and they have to be able to explain why that makes sense for them. It's a bigger hurdle because I think with, your younger traditional students who are 17, 18, and they're going to the US for that 4-year university experience, we understand that young people don't always have concrete plans. We understand that sometimes they may have concrete plans that don't always make sense, and we give them some leeway because they're young and we know that they need to, learn and explore during their university years before they really crystallize their future plans. But I think the expectation is different for a non-traditional student.
Yeah, and I guess we can also define what a traditional student is as the opposite of a non-traditional student. The traditional student is the one who goes to high school, graduates from high school, enters an undergraduate 4-year university degree program. They complete that, and then they immediately enter a master's degree program. They complete that, they immediately enter a PhD program. Obviously, it doesn't have to go that full length all the way to PhD, but anything along that point, that unbroken chain of education, that's the traditional student path. Even though I would say probably the trend is more towards people that are getting educated, not taking that extremely direct path. There are gaps, in the US, there are people that take gap years between high school and college. Even more common is a gap between completing a bachelor's degree and then going into a master's degree, getting some work experience. Then between a master's and a PhD, maybe even more common. But it's those gaps in that career, that academic career path that make it non-traditional. And it's those gaps that really are the key to making your story understandable to the visa officer, to making a cohesive narrative that they can understand and they can get their head around, right? Because if they just see, this resume of all education, it's very simple. Okay, education, got it. This is a student, right? But if it's education, all of a sudden, work, and now back to education, the question arises, why is someone going back to school, right? And so what is it that a visa officer, what did you want to see when you saw somebody coming in and maybe they've had, let's say a 5 or 10 year gap since their last education experience, and now they're going back to get another degree? What are some good reasons and good stories and good career plans that you've encountered that are good at convincing a visa officer that this is a real legitimate bona fide student?
Well, I mean, I would just also add to the non-traditional category, Ben, quickly. People who are doing a complete career change as well is another example of a non-traditional student. And also, too, people who already have that 4-year degree but are going back to the United States for a second 4-year degree. Maybe they've had their 4-year degree from their home country, and for some reason they want that second degree in the US. And I think the answer for all of these cases is the same, which is, your story has to make sense. And it's okay if your reasons for going back to school are non-traditional, but you have to be able to explain why that makes sense. And I think the older you are and the more ties that you have to your home country, the more challenging that can be. So, for example, if you have been working in your career for 10 years and you have children and a spouse and you're, looking to leave them or uproot them to go back to go to the United States for, either a more advanced degree or another degree, and your reasons for that have to be quite compelling and quite specific in order to convince the consular officer that makes sense. Because otherwise, the question in the consular officer's mind is always, why not do this in your home country? Why aren't you studying in your home country if in fact you really do need this degree? So I think it's important to really think through the narrative and the plans and the specific reasons why this plan makes sense executed outside of your home country in the U.S. And how it's really going to benefit you and your family financially. I think young people have the luxury of having big dreams and maybe having a financial plan yet. But I think if you want to convince a consular officer that it makes sense for you to spend a good chunk of money to study in the United States later in life, then it needs to make sense financially as well.